You're listening to Online Pet Health Podcasts with Dr. Megan Kelly. Continuing education for veterinarian rehabilitation therapists. Learn more at onlinepethealth.com.
Hey Vet Rehabbers, it's another one of my Behind the Vet Rehab Practice podcasts, and today with Rehab vet Nicole Hardie from Florida. She's recently opened up her own practice together with her husband, who is a surgeon, and it's called the Veterinary Orthopedic and Mobility Center. Now, one of the things I love about these interviews is that vet rehabbers share with us their wins and their losses, and although it's not great that they made mistakes, when they share them with us, we get to learn from them. So when we find ourselves in the same positions, we have hindsight which we would never have had before. So you get to fast track your success by not repeating the same mistakes that other vet rehabbers made. If you'd like to nominate a vet rehabber to be interviewed for my next Behind the Vet Rehab Practice podcast, please email me on meg@onlinepethealth.com. Now over to Nicole. Hey Nicole, thank you so much for joining me.
Hi Meg, thank you so much for having me. This is exciting to be here.
Nicole, why don't you tell the listeners how you got into the field of vet rehab?
I got into the field of vet rehab about 10 years ago. I was in general practice and had a great job, loved my boss, loved the people that I was working for. But I think like all of us, I had some patients who were having difficulty with their mobility, and I had done all that I knew to do for them and was at a stopping point. And one of them, I happened to refer to my husband, who's a surgeon, for it was a young dog with hip dysplasia. And he called me and said, I don't think she's a surgical candidate at this point. Why don't you think about rehab? And I didn't know anything about rehab to tell my clients. So I started doing some research, and I found the Canine Rehab Institute, which is in Florida, which is where I live in the United States. And I thought, well, I'll go take a class so at least I can learn more about this and talk to my clients about it. Loved it, finished the certification. And then when I was finished with that, I realized that if I didn't do it all the time, I wasn't ever going to feel like I was really proficient at rehab. So went off and started a mobile practice and have been strictly rehabilitation therapist since then.
I think it's so amazing that your husband's a surgeon and he was the one who actually suggested rehab to you. So we always have the thing, obviously, there's some surgeons that are pro rehab and others that are more pro surgery. We like them to have a little bit of a balance, but that's great that he's so for rehab.
Yes, it's very nice.
So are you practicing together, you and your husband, or is he at another practice?
We are now. Last June of 2020, we opened our own practice. It's a Veterinary Orthopedic and Mobility Center. And before that, I had been mobile doing house calls for almost 9 years, and he had been at a practice for about 15 years. And I loved my mobile practice. I had the greatest clients. I had the best time, but traffic was getting heavier and heavier. And I noticed people were on their phones more when they were driving, and I was worried about getting in an accident one day. And my patient load was getting heavier, but it was harder to get to everybody. So I sat down and I said, I think it's time for me to find a place, and I think it'd be great if we could do something together. So it took us about 2 years from conception to opening, but it's been fun. Learned a lot.
And it's amazing when you combine, surgery with rehab, with the two skills, especially if you've got, a purpose-built place where you're actually doing surgery and rehab. I mean, most of us rehabbers are usually on our own. What is it like actually working at the facility where the surgery is happening? It must be great to be able to see the surgery, see the cases coming through, and be able to treat them straight away.
For me, it's been wonderful. It's been wonderful to have that sounding board, because for so many years I was by myself. I didn't even have an assistant. So to have not only another veterinarian, but a veterinary surgeon in the same building with me has been great. And just to have a second pair of hands to, can you feel this? Can you look at this? What do you think about this? Has really, I think, helped me become a better rehabilitation therapist. It's been very nice.
So tell us about your setup now. So you were basically mobile for 8 to 9 years, and now you've built this or say purpose built, but you actually mentioned that you had the building, but you got to completely design exactly what you wanted inside.
Yes, yes. We got very, very lucky. We found a space that was open for lease, but it was a brand new building. So the floor was dirt, the ceilings were up to the rafters. So everything had to come in, the air conditioning, everything had to come in as we were building it. But that's been great because we were able to really sit down with an architect, make plans, and then those plans sat on the dining room table. And I would walk by 2 or 3 times a day. Jay would walk by, and about 2 days before they poured the concrete, I was looking at the plans and I realized that I hadn't asked for a sink in the gym where we do our therapeutic exercises, where cookies and peanut butter and, the dogs are slop. And I was like, I don't know how I missed that. And so I called, and 2 days before the concrete was poured, they were able to add that sink, which was good. So yeah, but it's been nice to have the space and actually see it go from an idea to working in action.
Yeah, I think it's every vet rehabber's dream to have the design exactly like you want, because most of us rent a building or buy a building and then we have to make do with the space. I mean, you go in there and you look, you say, well, could this fit in here? And it's always never ideal, right? And there are not many of us that get the opportunity to have a purpose-built one. So although you had the building, you still got to structure it all inside. So is there anything that you designed now, or you forgot about that sink? Anything you would change now if you could go back? So anything maybe that you missed out on?
So 2 things, and they're going to seem silly, maybe 3 things. First one is I wish we would have put a little refrigerator in the gym area too, because we use a lot of string cheese, a lot of cream cheese. And my office is right across the hall from the gym. So I have a little refrigerator in my office, but we're always like running across the hall. So if I had a little fridge in there, that would be great. Also in that room, the computer, all of the plugs, the outlet is straight behind the computer on the desk. And I had that because they could have drilled a hole in the counter and then had the wires go underneath and plug in, but I was worried about dogs getting underneath the counter, potentially getting tangled in the wires, but I wish we would have done that so all the wires weren't up on the counter. Little things, but and then I wish we would have planned a little bit more it was hard to plan for more space to move into later. We used up every single inch that we had. So, but that's a little, so it's good.
And do you have hydrotherapy there?
Yes. So we have 2 separate rooms that we do therapy. We have one room that we call the gym, and we do the therapeutic exercise sessions there. I do a lot of my evals in the gym as well, because for me, a big part of my exam is how are the dogs walking, moving, getting up and down. So I find it easier to do that in the bigger gym area. And then we have an underwater treadmill in a separate room. So we can be doing 2 treatments simultaneously. We can have a dog in the gym, and then we can also have a dog in the underwater treadmill.
Great. And then what's the flow like between, consult rooms and the gym and the underwater treadmill? Did you think about that when you did the design?
Yes. So when we did the design, we have a main entrance, but then we also have a separate rehab entrance. So anybody that's coming in for a therapeutic exercise session, underwater treadmill, laser, or even an acupuncture with me, if they're coming every week, then they just come in the rehab entrance. And my office is right next to that. The rehab nurses are always on that side. So as people come in, and then they come in enough where they know where to go, like we'll find them sitting in the hydrotherapy room with the lights off. And I'm like, guys, you didn't tell me you were here. For initial consults, they come in through the main entrance, but everything is connected. So even if they come in through the rehab entrance and we need to go to an exam room, it's a few steps away. So everything is open to everything else. And then surgery is at the opposite end of rehab. So we have the consult rooms in the middle that we share.
And one of the nice things with your setup is that you must have kennel facilities too, because obviously the surgical cases are being kenneled. And that's one of the things a lot of us vet rehabbers, when we're on our own, it's difficult to have the space to have kennels. So do you have many sort of patients that stay there permanently that you treat, so paralyzed patients or post-operative patients?
Not many right now. All of our surgery patients go home same day. So they all go home and then they'll come back 2 weeks later. If they're doing rehabilitation with me, they'll come back and see me for suture removal, and then we'll make a plan going from there. So I don't have very many in-house patients. Mostly everybody comes and brings them at the time of their appointment, their owners. And most owners like to stay and watch too, which is nice.
Awesome. And with COVID, are you allowing people in at the moment, or is
We are, yes, we always did. We're lucky in that we're doing the build out. We did not know COVID was coming. But we made the exam rooms nice and big. The gym is nice and big. So we were able to socially distance with everyone. And we just decided that with surgical procedures, with rehabilitation procedures, or it's complicated, and there's usually complicated things going on with their pet, and we wanted to be able to talk to people in person if they wanted to. If people want to do curbside, they can, but we're lucky to have the space to have owners come in and sit and chat just as we did before, except we wear masks.
Yeah, it's great because I think the curbside is such a challenge. I think it adds on so much time onto your consult time.
Yes. So far so good with that.
So let's backtrack a little bit back to the mobile clinic. So obviously, once you qualified at Canine Rehab Institute, then you opened up the mobile clinic. How long did it take you to build up to a practice that you were having enough patients every day?
I would say it probably took me about 6 months, I would say, for me to build up enough. With originally I would see things that referred to me from surgery, but then I would talk to their family vet as well. So kind of building that referral basis took a bit of time. The nice thing about mobile was that my kids were very young. I have 2 girls, and at the time when I started, they were, I think, 7 and 4. So I was actually only working while they were in school. So I was working more like an 8 to 2 o'clock day, which that was great. It allowed me the flexibility to be with them, but also in terms of the patients that I could see, those spots filled up fairly quickly since it was a shorter day.
And did you have quite a big radius where you were driving around? Did you have to try and limit that?
I did in the beginning. If someone called me, I was so excited. I'd be like, when do you want me to come? So I'd be like driving all over the city. I actually covered about 3 counties, my radius. And then as I did it more, I got better about saying, well, I'm going to be in this part of town on Wednesdays. So I did get better the longer I went, that even though I covered a big radius, I didn't do all of that in one day. Eventually, for about a year, I'd be like, okay, I'm coming. When do you want me to come? So that I did get better about scheduling geographically as I learned.
I mean, how did things change over the 8 to 9 years in your mobile clinic? Did you just increase the amount of hours that you did? What was the sort of maximum number of patients that you were able to see each day?
The maximum number of patients I was able to see, if I scheduled everybody very close together geographically, I could see 5. Sometimes I could see 6 because I had a couple families where I saw 2 dogs in one household. So I could see 6, squeeze 6 in if I had those cases in. So it really depended on how long I had to travel and how many I could see. And sometimes I would even start, instead of 8, I would see a 7:30 appointment just to try to squeeze extra in that way.
Yeah. And then how many days a week were you doing mobile?
Usually 5 days a week. So usually Monday through Friday, not on the weekends. The other thing that helped me tremendously when I was mobile is just the change in technology. When I started, I didn't have a phone that could text. I didn't have GPS in my car. So the night before, I would go on the computer and I would map out everybody and I would staple the pieces of paper together. And then I would be driving and like looking at the directions. So as technology got, and I could text a client, I'm stuck in traffic, I'm going to be 5 minutes late, that sort of thing. That really made it easier as time went on for me in terms of scheduling everybody in too.
Yeah, I remember those days. I was exactly the same. I mean, I had a map book. I remember, like looking at the map book, where to go.
Yes.
I mean, it's so much easier now. So much easier now. So if you look at when you had your mobile clinic, what were the limitations for you being mobile? Because obviously, you did that and you decided now that's not for me long term. I want to take this next step and go and open up a clinic. So what are the things that you didn't like about being mobile that made you now take that next step into opening a clinic?
I think the limitation of how many patients in a day I could see, and I just felt like I was losing time when I was driving because I couldn't be productive at all. I couldn't get any notes done. I couldn't email anybody. Sometimes I could do phone calls, but so I felt like had some time where I was just losing productivity in the driving. Um, and I think the other thing was I was limited. I could do exercise sessions, I could do laser. I was even doing acupuncture as house calls, which was great, but obviously I couldn't do hydrotherapy. And there were some patients where I felt like if I had a second person to help me, I could do a little bit better job for them also.
Yeah. And were you having to turn quite a lot of people down because you must have been quite fully booked up towards the end?
No, you know what? Not too bad. Not too bad. Very lucky in the area. We have a lot of options for rehab and acupuncture, so that's nice. So there are definitely a lot of different options where we are.
So did that whole, I mean, all those people that you were seeing now mobile, did they all say, did you just make a big cut? Did you say, like, as of this day, I'm seeing patients at the clinic now? How did you make that transition?
So slowly, actually, when we opened, I had stopped taking new patients about 3 months before we opened. I say that, but I actually took a couple but they were short term. I knew they were going to be long-term patients. And so I let everybody know and I stopped taking new patients. But then when we opened on Fridays, I would see house calls I just had a few left that couldn't get in and out of the car, or the drive was just much too far. But last 2 weeks ago, actually, I finally told everybody I was only down to 3 house call patients. I told them, I was like, I just can't come anymore. And they were like, they all took it really well. Like, I think it's harder for me to say I can't come anymore. They were all like, we knew this was coming. We understand. So it was a gradual transition from full-time in clinic and doing house calls. And I'll still, if somebody's close by and they can't get the dog in the car, every now and then I'll do a house call for a patient here.
Yeah. It's easier when it's close. But
Yes.
even then, it is time, right? It's the
Yes.
time to drive there, put all the equipment in the car. And like you say, one of the challenges is writing up those notes. I actually did a Behind the Vet Rehab Practice podcast with someone in Singapore, and they actually don't have their own car. Her name is Priya, and she actually she goes in an Uber. She's got another name for it there, but so she Ubers. So I was actually thinking as you were talking, I wonder if she's like typing up her notes in the Uber as she's going to the next.
I bet she is.
Taxi, basically, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that was also one of the challenges for myself, at the end of the day, especially if you got behind time, if you had a bit of extra time, you could always just, stop, get in the car and then quickly write the notes, send an email on your phone if your phone's able to do that. But if you're running late, then you get in the car and you rush. And then at the end of the day, then you still got to sit and do all those notes because it's a knock-on effect, right?
Yes.
And traffic and
yes.
Yeah.
And I had a online software. So I would try to type as many notes as I could while I was seeing the patient, but there were times where my hotspot wouldn't work or, the signal was low. And so then I was trying to write down at least so I could remember what I did and type it up later. So yes, the notes, it's still a challenge. The notes are always a challenge.
I think also when you don't have an assistant, then it's really difficult to type notes because you're usually using your hands, right? You're either holding the patients. And yes. I know with me, I also treat with acupuncture. So sometimes when the needle's in, there's an opportunity to, to quickly try and put a few notes in your notebook. But yeah, it'll be awesome to see, in about 10 years time, how easy it will be to be mobile, because I'm sure technology would have advanced even more. I know there are actually some voice recognition stuff. So like there's a voice recognition, especially for vets, actually, because it recognizes all the veterinary terminology and it actually writes your notes for you. So those are the kind of things we've got to start adapting to so we can get more proficient in our households. Yes. Yeah.
Even in clinic, I could use that. Get my notes done for
yeah, for sure. I mean, chatting to a few of the vet rehabbers, I know some of them even have their own scribes. So they actually have a person dedicated and they speak and they type. But writing notes is always something. You got to find time to do it, whether it's during or afterwards, or the worst at the end of the day, right?
Yes. Yep.
So all your clients, you had all these vets now that were referring to you. Are they still referring to you? Because you're a specialty practice now. There's no first opinion at your practice, right?
There are, yes. If they can come directly to see us if they like, but I would say that's not the norm. So most of our clients come because they were referred. So I do still have some veterinarians that will refer to me, but I am in a different city than where I was doing mobile. The city that I'm in now, I didn't see house calls at all. It was too far out of my range. So that's been something I think too with COVID that's been difficult for me, because I didn't know a lot of the vets in this area. And I haven't been able to really go out and meet people, and we haven't had meetings and those sorts of things. So doing a lot of phone calls and meeting people over the phone for the first time. But we do still have some people that will make the drive to come to see us if their vets recommend them, or recommend us.
And so are the majority of your patients coming from the surgical side of the practice referred to you?
It's about half and half. So I have about half of them are post-operative patients, and then the other half are primary rehab patients. Some of those will have come in for a surgical consult and then realize that maybe surgery is not either going to be helpful, or we want to try some rehab before surgery. So some of those that actually come through surgery end up doing rehab instead.
Okay. So tell me about your team. So how many people in the rehab team?
The rehab team is me, a full-time rehab nurse, and we about 3 months ago now have a part-time rehab nurse as well. So they're really just 3 of us on the rehab side. On the surgery side, though, there are 6 surgical nurses, and so they're great because if we need an extra hand, that we can always grab them. If we have a patient that needs to be worked up and we need radiographs, most of the time the surgical nurses will do that so that we can continue working through our appointments and treatments. So
how do you work the hours there? So what hours is the rehab clinic open, and how many days a week?
We see patients from our first appointment is at 9 and our last appointment starts at 5, Monday through Thursday. Fridays, my first appointment is at 9 and the last one is at 2. We're supposed to take an hour for lunch. Sometimes we do. A lot of times I end up scheduling somebody in that hour because I want to get everybody in. Our part-time person, she comes in at 2:00 on Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. So on those days, we actually double book those spots if we can. So we'll have 2 patients scheduled for the 2, 3, 4, and 5 o'clock spot. If we need to. We don't always have them all full, but.
And then you're not open on the weekends?
No weekends yet.
Was that a decision that you'd made already before? Because I know, clients are often always pushing for weekend consults because it's obviously more convenient for them because they're not working.
Yes. That actually has always been, and that's mostly been driven by our children. Our 2 girls are pretty active. One of them dances and one of them competes in gymnastics. And especially this time of year, we're almost always doing one of those things. So it would have been really hard to try to work and manage those weekend activities. So as soon as I switched to rehab, I just decided that I wasn't going to be able to do weekends. And actually, that's something else that technology has changed is more and more people are working from home. Even before COVID, a lot of people had the ability to work from home, if not every day, at least one day of a week. And so they could accommodate me coming.
Yeah. I must say, I never consulted on the weekends either. And it was initially driven by, I used to do competing in canoeing, and all the races were always on a Saturday. So when I made the shift from normal sort of primary veterinary, where I was working every second Saturday and on call every second weekend, and I used to miss the races, and some of them were key races in order to be able to do a race sort of at the end of the season. So I was always missing races. So I decided when I went to rehab, that's it. I'm going to do all these races and I'm not going to work. And the same thing really, it just worked out with kids, not having childcare on the weekends. So yeah. So the surgeon, is your husband the only surgeon, or is there more than one surgeon on the surgery side?
Just him. So he's the only surgery vet, and then I'm the only rehab vet.
Okay. So what happens when you guys go away? Because both of you.
That's a good question. Good question. We're hoping that as we grow, since we haven't only been open a year yet, but we're hoping at some point to be able to add on more veterinarians as well. And so for now, right now, we take the normal holidays we take off together. But yeah, that's a good question. I don't have a great answer for you yet.
Yeah, I was just thinking about having two locums in at the same time. You usually need to have one person who's been there a little bit. But like you say, as you grow, I'm sure you'll get more rehab vets and more surgeons. And then, you'll be able to have people that take over. I think for myself, when I was in practice, one of the biggest challenges was always finding somebody to replace me. But you guys are so lucky there, because rehab it's a profession that's quite recognized, and there are a lot more vets that are qualified in rehab. And back in the day when I had my practice, I think there were like 3 or 4 vets in the whole of South Africa who had the qualification. So, and there was another vet who was probably about an hour and 15 minutes away from me in Cape Town. And so we had different practices, but we used to always chat because we couldn't take leave at the same time, because she would have to see my patients and I would have to see her patients. So even though we had our own different businesses, I'd be like, I'm taking leave in this time. Is that okay? Can you see my patients? So we had to work together.
That's nice.
Yeah. So obviously now, when you guys built this practice, you must have had to get some funding for it. So have you got loans? Did you have saved money? How did that all work?
We got a loan. We used here in the United States, there's a SBA loan, which is a small business loan. So we went that route, enabled it so that we were able to build the facility and then also buy the equipment.
And how was that? Was that a little bit scary?
It's very scary. Yes, it's very scary. And there's so much paperwork and, so many steps that you have to complete. So it was a long process, and it's a big loan, but on the other hand, I needed an underwater truck. There's certain things that you need. So, yeah.
So you had quite a bit of equipment. Obviously, you said you already had a laser and some other equipment. What else did you have to buy on top of the underwater treadmill?
For the rehab, not too much, because I did already have my laser. I had an electroacupuncture unit. So really on the rehabilitation side, in terms of the cost, the thing that was pretty expensive that we put in was the flooring, because I wanted rubber flooring so that when the dogs came in, they wouldn't slip. I was like, that's going to be a mess, if these dogs are coming in and they're scared to walk on the floors. So we did spend a bit to make sure that the flooring was correct. But other than that, I had a good bit of the exercise equipment as well.
Yeah. And is that rubber flowing throughout, including the surgical side?
The surgical side, it stops kind of where the surgery procedure and OR area is, and that flooring is vinyl flooring, so it is a bit more slippery there. But the rubber flooring goes throughout the waiting room and into the exam rooms and up and down the hallways, and then in hydrotherapy in the gym as well.
I think they need that vinyl type flooring, right, for cleaning and sterilizing and that too.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And not that the rubber is not clean and you can't sterilize it, but I think it's easier to clean a vinyl floor for an operating theater.
Yes.
Yeah. So what are the plans now to market and grow the practice? I mean, how full are you at the moment if you look at your consults, percentage wise?
Oh, I would say we are about 80% full.
Sure.
Yes.
That's great.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
you've been going for just under a year, right?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay. So you don't have much capacity to expand.
No, on my end, I just have to double up more hours. I guess I have to get a second person.
Yeah. But you've got space to get in another rehab vet, right? So you could get in another vet if you've got the two nurses.
Yes.
That could give you more hours.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And that would be helpful too, because in clinic, acupuncture patients really take two people. That was the nice thing about the mobile practice, was that doing house calls, I felt like the dogs were a lot more relaxed. So I could do an acupuncture treatment at their home by myself, maybe with the owner talking to them, but most of the time it was just me. Here, I think the dogs are a little bit more nervous. So it does take two people. So if we had a second vet, then that veterinarian could be doing more, we could schedule more acupuncture while rehab things were going on with another vet supervising that or doing consults.
And so in the clinic now, do you have a practice manager, or are you and your husband doing most of the practice management?
We're doing most of the practice management. Our front desk, we have a single hospitality coordinator, and she is now taking over office manager, which I told her, I said, pretty much you're just officially doing all the things that you're already doing for us. So she handles a lot of the merchant services. If there's any troubleshooting with the software, if there's the internet's going, she does a lot of that for us. She also does a lot of my client communication, because I'm seeing so many patients during the day that a lot of times I'll just say, hey, Charlie was here yesterday, first time the underwater treadmill. Do you mind calling and checking on him for me? So she does a lot of that for me. She monitors the emails. The rest of it, Jay and I split. I do the payroll, and he does a lot of the bill paying. And we have we really ended up with a great team. We have a great insurance agent. Anytime I have questions, I can call her. She's on top of it. We have a great person that's our health insurance contact. We have a really great accountant. So I have a lot of people that I can reach out to, and I don't feel like we have to put all of that on our shoulders. And
between the two of you, is there one that is sort of more business inclined than the other one, or are you pretty equal?
Oh, it depends on who you ask. But I think because I already owned the mobile practice, I have more, I've done more of the business side of things. So I just tend to have a little bit more experience with that. And I love QuickBooks. I like a lot of those things. So
I think you're the only vet that does.
I love it. It's so weird.
I those accounting packages. You can never know what's going on with them. It takes me forever to get into them.
I don't have a good explanation. I'm not a math person, so it's not the numbers thing. It's more of the putting everything in its category and making it neat and making it make sense and looking at a report. So I do some of that.
So who's responsible for marketing of the practice?
I would say that is both of us. I think in terms of referring vet communication, Jay does a lot more of that than I do, because a lot of his surgery patients are more complicated, or he'll call referring veterinarians over, after a surgery is over. So he does a lot more in terms of outreach than I do. Again, another person, we have a great person that helped us design the website, and she checks the website to make sure it's functional. So it's shared, but those are the main ways that we we market. And then also before we opened, we made brochures and cards and we mailed those out to a lot of the referring practices in the area.
And are you quite active on social media?
We post. We could be more active, I think, but it's hard to get everything. But I do wish that was something that I was better at in getting more posts out there.
Yeah, I think it's time, right?
Yes.
You actually need. There's actually a few different practices that I'm thinking of, and one has like one dedicated person is the social media person. Another practice actually hires somebody outside and then they send all their videos and pictures to them. And then the other practice, everyone has a day in which they do it. So
I like that.
Monday's your day and you have to post something on a Monday. So find a picture, take a picture of a patient or post something. And then, everyone basically has a day, which I think works really well because also you get to really then see the team and those personal stories come through. And then it's not so overwhelming, right? So
yes.
if there are 3 of you, so then you could divide it up, divide each day up, and then at least there's something being posted every day.
I like that.
Yeah,
I like that.
But it is a lot of work, the social media.
And I guess because I like all the categories, I always feel like I need to be more creative for social media posts. Like I think it always has to say something cute. And that's where I hit a roadblock. It's a challenge for me on, well, this post seems kind of boring. So if somebody else had a little bit more, had Monday and they were more creative, that would be fun too, to see how the posts were different.
And then you can also plan your day because, you can, if Monday's your day, then, you can maybe on Wednesday, you have content for Monday and then you write it already and you plan it and you can spend a little bit of time. It's not under pressure. So I think that's when it's a problem. It's when it's like, I have to post something right now. And then you get like writer's block. You don't know what to say.
I like it.
Yeah. So if you look back now at your journey, is there anything that you would change?
Oh, I don't think so. I can't think of anything.
Yeah,
I can't. Good. No, I think and I laugh because I say I am too old now. I've learned my lesson to never say never. Because I would, if you would ask me 20 years ago, I'll never own my own practice. I'll never, I'll never do that. Yeah. So, no, I think everything I would leave the same. Yeah.
Everything happened for a reason. And if there, is there any advice that you would give any of the new vet rehabbers that are just coming into the field?
Oh, I think my advice would be to have patience. I think we all want to do everything right the first time and have everything go perfectly and have our patients do great. And what I tell my clients is the skill that I think that I had to hone the most in learning how to be a veterinary rehabilitation therapist was patience, and to do what I knew to do and to give it a little time, because with what we're doing, yes, they get better, but sometimes it's not a quick change, and that's okay. That's how it goes. So I think just to take a breath every now and then can really make a big difference.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I think also, we're so quick when things aren't going the right way to judge ourselves and to get cross with ourselves or say, like, what have we done wrong, and maybe nothing. Maybe we just need to be a bit more patient and give it a bit more time. And maybe we're actually on the right track, but always just to be aware, maybe we need to change tact. But yeah, patience is something we definitely all need.
Yes. And I think what you said though, too, is also being able to change your plan if you need to. And I'll tell that to clients too. I'll say, this is how we're going to start, but if you feel like it's not working, or I feel like it's not working, then let's have that conversation and let's change plans if we need to. Let's be flexible about things. If the dog doesn't like what we're doing, then let's figure out something, because that to me is very important, that my patients are having fun, that they enjoy this therapy, because they don't know why we're doing it. And a lot of times they're painful. So I always want it to be a positive experience, but enabled for that to happen, I have to be willing to be flexible. And I also have to be willing to listen to the clients, which is what I love about this. I love getting to know the clients and having them be a part of what we're doing. And I always tell them, I always want us to have a plan, but it doesn't have to be my plan. It has to be our plan. So as long as we're all talking and communicating and agreeing, then that's fantastic. So I think, that would be my last piece of advice, was really embrace your clients and get to know them, because they are really in tune with what's going on with their pets, and they know when something's off. And so I tell people, I said, don't second guess yourself. If you feel like something's wrong, call me, because you're right. You are right, And so getting to know them and trust them really has made my life so much more fulfilling, because I just really enjoy the patients, but I really enjoy the clients too.
I really find that my relationships with being a rehab vet with my clients is very different to the relationships when I was a vet. I still had good relationships, but I think we get to know our rehab owners, the the owners are so much more. I think that we spend a little bit more time with them, and I feel like that bond with them is completely different to when I was a normal vet. Did you have the same experience?
Oh, yes. I always laugh because I know where everybody's going on vacation, and I know what their kids are doing and their grandkids are doing. It's great though. I've met so many people and learned so many things just by getting to know my clients. So yeah, that'd be interesting if I could go back and tell my younger self when I was in general practice to get to know them in the same way, but you don't see them as frequently, so it makes it a little bit more challenging.
And I think you don't spend as much time with them. Our consults are so much longer,
Yes.
So we get to spend so much more time. We get to have that time to ask them all those questions and learn about their family and all the other pets.
Yes. I love
Nicole, it's been so fabulous chatting to you. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Oh, I did too. Thank you so much for having me. It's really exciting for me to be here.
And all the best with your new clinic.
Thank you.
It's going to go from strength to strength.
Thank you. Fingers crossed.
Cheers,
Bye.
Nicole. Thank you. Bye. If you enjoyed this podcast, please hit the subscribe button so you get notified every time I load a new podcast. And please, if you get a moment, head over to Stitcher or iTunes and leave me a review. It's a really lonely job being a podcaster, and so the only time I get to hear from you or know that you're out there is when I get a review. And know that I read every single one of your reviews. So to those of you that have left reviews, I want to say a very, very big thank you. Every time we get a review, it really helps to get the Veterinary Rehabilitation podcast out there to all the vet rehabbers all over the world. Alright, vet rehabbers, so if you are looking for more continuing education in the field of veterinary rehabilitation, head over to onlinepethouth.com. Go be awesome, guys.